So let's get started with Jim Harbaugh and interviewing already for a head coaching job. I believe this is the third year in a row that Jim Harbaugh has either interviewed or shown interest in returning to the NFL. And after going 15-0, winning a national championship in Michigan, I don't think anybody at Michigan would begrudge him the opportunity to coach in the NFL once again. Interviewing with the Chargers, I think, is interesting for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I would love to see Dean Spanos spend the kind of money that Jim Harbaugh would be looking to hire a head coach. And then I would like to see LA Charger fans go, yo, dog, where has this been the whole time? But, before we get into that, let's also acknowledge that before they were the LA Chargers, they were the San Diego Chargers. And that's important when we're talking about Jim Harbaugh because he really got his start as a head coach, coaching the University of San Diego and really turning them into a juggernaut, the kind that would win the Pioneer League, get the automatic bid, and then get ousted in the FCS. The reason that would happen is the Pioneer League does not give athletic scholarships. So you actually had to go get guys that were not on scholarship and create football players and create a winning football program. Went from there to another hard job to Stanford and got them to a BCS game and produced some of the best players that we've seen in quite a long while, including Andrew Luck, who I think many people would regard as one of the greatest quarterbacks of his generation. And even as he retired early, depending on who you talk to at Indianapolis, you would tend to think that Andrew Luck had a pretty outstanding career in the NFL. You also got to see what Jim Harbaugh did with Colin Kaepernick and taking 49ers to the Super Bowl. He faced his brother, John Harbaugh, Baltimore Ravens, and lost that game, returns to Michigan, and it wasn't going so well, right? Matter of fact, we got some years in there where it was looking like Jim Harbaugh was either trying to get up out of Dodge or they were going to get him up out the paint. And then 2021 happens. They show life. They win against Ohio State. They win the Big Ten title. They make the college football playoff, right? They do it a second time. And then the third time, finally, they done what no other Michigan team had done. They ran the table 15-0. They won the national championship in the college football playoff era. And now we're seeing not just Jim Harbaugh looking around, because while, he has interviewed with the Chargers, it wouldn't shock me to find out that Jerry Jones tries to interview him if something were to happen at Dallas. It wouldn't shock me if he gets interviewed for the Atlanta Falcons job. Wouldn't shock me if anybody else made some openings, right? As we're still trying to figure out what's going on. We got Mike Tomlin storming out of press conferences because he might want to take a break with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I believe that one way or another, Jim Harbaugh is going to get his money. And I think nobody's going to begrudge him getting his money. Now, he has hired an agent, which is something he hadn't done before. Jim Harbaugh had been representing himself up until recently when he hired Don Yee, who's famous for being Tom Brady's agent, another Michigan man, noted quarterback in the professional football. Anyway, I'm looking at this and I'm going, as long as this keeps going on, the more I think it helps Michigan. The more I think you could get Jim Harbaugh to return to Michigan. And if that's the case, you get to keep this outstanding staff intact because as we are talking about this, we've seen coaches move around basically since the national championship game, but since the end of the season, and nobody of note has left that Michigan staff. Now, would a Sharon Moore or a Jesse Minter and the like want to join him wherever he decides to go, if that's in the NFL, or stay with him at Michigan? I think either way, they're going to try to do that. And then we can start talking about what Michigan might do if Jim Harbaugh decides to make the leap to the NFL. Either way, if he announces that he is staying, if he announces that he is leaving, we will do an emergency show right here. Not necessarily live like we're doing it right now, but you'll get it just as soon as we know about it. I also want to get into what this looks like from a personnel standpoint, because along with these players that helped win the national championship, Roman Wilson's gone. Blake Corum is gone. J.J. McCarthy is gone. So now we're going to see how they can rebuild, go into the portal, right? They're also going to lose about 7 offensive linemen that were really great, especially down the stretch. All 7 of those guys could get drafted in 2024. Could it be the Donovan Edwards and the Alex Origi show? Probably, right? We would love to see which wide receivers step up in a big way out there, right? Samaj Morgan being one of those, Tyler Moore being another one of those. But I'm really interested to see if Jim Harbaugh did make a leap to the NFL, how much of drafting J.J. McCarthy would be a part of that. If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.